Welcome to the City of Little Rock Board of Directors Agenda Meeting for February 14, 2023. This is our opportunity to review the agenda for our former board meeting that will be held, on February 21st. We'll start now. What I'm going to try to do is get through as much of the agenda on things. How many questions do we have for items? We have four modifications to today's agenda, which is items M1, M2, which are for amendment to a vehicle lease with Enterprise FM. Item M3, which is for extension of the Heights Temporary Entertainment District. Item M4, which is for the extension of the 3rd Street Temporary Entertainment District. We also have a request from staff to defer items 14 and 15 until March the 7th, 2023. I do know we do have Summit Utilities, Mr. Kenny Henderson, who's here, but we also have a number of different residents. I know we're going to at least have hopefully no more than 30 minutes, but at least 30 minutes with Mr. Henderson. And so before we get to him, I want to try to get as much of the business, this particular business, done while we have some residents here, recognizing that some individuals here, with it being Valentine's Day. I know a lot of folks are trying to do some things. Director Phillips, I know you have too. So, board members, and I know Director Campiris as well. And all right.
I'm not done. I'm not done.
Director Peck has a very busy evening. All right, enough for the funny business. Director Wyrick.
Yes.
I know you had some questions, and maybe we can get through some of that before we get to Summit.
Okay. Item number 6. I received an email from someone that talked about on this particular bid award that we did not select the low bidder, that we selected the next highest bidder. And can somebody tell us what the situation is with that? That's one question.
Mr. Moore, but what's your other question? Maybe we can answer them all.
Oh, no, they're long. I want a presentation on ordinance number 12, which is annexation into the city. A question on item 18, and I'm hoping that somebody from Pulaski County will do a presentation either tonight or next Tuesday night before we vote on it. So that's on my list. And then there are 2 resolutions at the very end, 25 and 26, that are talking about municipal property owners improvement districts. So I have questions on both of those 2.
All right, so I do know, at least on item 18, the county, I do not believe they're represented, but they will definitely be here on the 21st. So we'll have that communication to them.
Because most of my questions really are, where they are with the process and what's going on with that. It's been going on almost a year since I talked to the judge about the proposal, and I know he's had a couple of neighborhood meetings, but unfortunately they were on Tuesday night, and I was not able to attend because I was here. So I'd like to get his information on that. And then we have a report on item number 12 from Jamie on the Crystal Valley Trails annexation. If you remember, I asked for that to be pulled down and a study to be done to talk like an impact study around this area, because it's at the tail end of the city of Little Rock limits and then Pulaski County. And it's a pretty substantial amount of homes that are going to be built there, and so he's put together some information on that. And then the last 2 items, if you remember, I asked I think it was last week or week before, where these Little Rock Municipal Improvement Districts were, because I couldn't read meets and bounds and nobody seemed to know. Well, as it turns out, this Edgewood subdivision is located just east of Cooper Orbit Road. And we went through a PRD revision a few months ago, and so now we're doing these improvement districts. The controversial piece about this, I looked at the resolution, I don't see who, I understand that these resolutions are developed by the property owners and supposed to be a certain percentage of the property owners involved, and then there's 3 elected officials, and then the board approves it and it's over. I understand what the normal process is, but this particular one involves the setting up for the subdivision for sewer, streets, drainage, and all those kinds of things. There is a sewer improvement district in this area. This subdivision is in that sewer improvement district. Recently, there's been a lawsuit filed, and recently it was ruled that property within this subdivision has to be, the sewer was already tied into it before we did the lawsuit. I know I'm kind of rambling. It's kind of complicated trying to explain it to you. But the sewer improvement district took the individual to court, and the judges ruled that he has to pay into the sewer improvement district. He is appealing that now. So this subdivision is in the same sewer improvement district that the judge just ruled that he has to be a part of. And so the neighborhood is concerned that if we got a judgment on one subdivision, that he has to pay into that improvement district, but he's appealing it, what's going to happen with this subdivision? Because it's in the same sewer improvement district, and he needs to be a part of that district and pay his fair share of the improvements. The other question is, I understand some of the property owners have been to the sewer company, and there's a 10-inch line that's going there, and they don't seem to know if they're going to tie into that. So just some general questions about what this item 25 and 26, what they encompass, and what is the policy for the board in regards to the fact that there's an active judgment and an appeal, and this very resolution is being set aside for sewer in the sewer improvement district area. I talked to Jamie Collins about it earlier, and he said that's a legal question. So we have a legal person in the room. So I'm hopeful that if he can't answer that tonight, maybe by Tuesday, he can give us an idea if it has anything to do with the legal transactions that are going on now. So I would like to make sure those are separate on our agenda so we can get that addressed either tonight or before the meeting next Tuesday.
Yes, ma'am.
Hopefully I explained it well enough. It's kind of,
I kept notes.
it kind of goes around the world. I just don't want us to be doing something that is going to impact the lawsuit or create additional issues for the sewer in that area. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
All right. Yes, ma'am. So on item 25 and 26, I've conferred with the city attorney. He's going to get your report by the end of this week or definitely before Tuesday on the legal. So we don't have to discuss that tonight because he's going to do that research to have that answer for you on item 25 and 26. Before I ask, we already discussed item 18. We'll visit with the county team to ensure. I know they planned to be here. They were here last week, so they'll be here. Excuse me, next week. So that handles 18, 25, and 26. I believe you also had a question on item number 12. No, in item number 12, which that ties into 25 and 26.
No,
No, it actually doesn't.
no, they don't. They're in different parts of the world.
Right, you want a
But they are in Ward
presentation on
7.
12? What's the question on 12?
Yes.
I asked for an impact study to be done in
Right.
the area
Okay,
because it's at the tail end of our city limits boundary. The original application that came forward, there was a note from the police department that said they weren't sure they can serve this area. So it prompted me to ask that we look at the services to this area to make sure that we were doing the right thing, that we weren't causing issues for the city. There's a ton of residents that are in opposition to it. But my whole question was, is it economically feasible that we should annex this property in that's on the tail end of our boundary? Jamie has done a report, and I don't know if everybody got it or not. It was not attached to the website for the items tonight, but he might be good if he went through that. I do have a couple of questions that I think this leaves out, so it might be good for him to do that. And there'll be a number of folks here to testify against this on Tuesday night as well.
okay, so we do know the board has received the impact study that, I know you did send that out to the members of the board. Before we,
No, that he didn't. I may be the only one that has a copy of it. Okay,
it's on the,
it's there now because I don't think it was there earlier. I'm just going by what Jamie said. It was not attached. when
it's
I
on
talked
the,
to him earlier.
it's,
I saw it today on the website.
Yeah. Well, he was working with Susan to get it done. So, I mean, that's a minor detail. I just don't know how many people understand what this study does and the implications.
so I think the last thing besides item number 12, before Mr. Moore answers item number, the next item in regards to the bid, Director Peck, did you have a question?
Yes, under planning and development, item number 11, to condemn a structure on Markham in Ward 4. I'd like this to be deferred until March the 7th at the request of the owner of the property, who will be out of town and has some important information to share.
Will do. That'll be deferred to March 7th, 25 and 26 will be held separate. Director Hines?
Mayor, when we get to the separate items, I want to address 18, which is my sponsored resolution.
All right. Any more?
I'll defer to everybody else. It shouldn't take long.
All right, Director Miller?
Yes, on resolution number 4, I just want to have this presentation. I just want to see where that is. I think I know where it is, but I'm not sure.
We'll get to that. So, Mr. Moore?
I think Director Wyrick, you had a question about Resolution 6. I wasn't made aware that this afternoon when you all received an email from one of the companies that bid. We held a quick meeting with the procurement department, went over the process and procedure that they used, and I'm satisfied that they have been consistent in following the process and the procedures that are in place, and would recommend moving forward with doing construction.
Okay, so is it true that we didn't take the lowest bid, that we took the second lowest bid?
We took the lowest, most responsive bid. The company that, one of the companies that bid was disqualified because they did not follow proper procedure.
Okay, and
And just one other thing, we've been very consistent in implementing this procedure, because we want to do business with, a lot of companies, different companies, but in this case, it was reviewed back in December. I was not aware of it till this afternoon, but proper procedure that's in place was followed.
So it was it's my understanding it was some sort of a technical procedure that was not followed by the lowest bidder.
When we put out bids, there's typically, especially at this level, addendums that are added. This was added the day, and the addendum was to extend it for 24 hours because we were having technical issues. But our procedures require you to acknowledge all the addendums, and this company did not.
So that explains why the complainant said that they were on time with their bid, but the person that you selected got an extension for 24 hours. There was an extension across the board for 24 hours, and it was not acknowledged by the lowest bidder.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine's on 24, and I guess we're not there yet.
Got you. Director Richardson.
Mayor, I just wanted to chime in on Mr. Moore's comments. The operative word is the most responsive, lowest bid, not the lowest bid. I think we need to keep that in mind. It was the most responsive, lowest bid. And we can have bids that are lower than the most responsive, but they may not be responsive to the RFP or RFQ. So I wanted to make sure we're clear that we heard Mr. Moore when he said the most responsive, lowest bid, with respect to what Director Wire was just talking about. Thank you.
I heard responsive, but from the information that was sent, I wanted to drill a little bit further down to understand what the situation was, because it didn't sound good in the email.
Thank you. All right. Any more questions before we try to get to the presentation? And then,
Mayor, yeah, I do have one question and one statement on mine.
yes, sir.
On Resolution 5 on the Hinton Center, Bruce, my memory's short, but when I first got on the board, didn't we do a lot of work to the Hinton Center for masonry work and waterproofing? Is this a continuation of that or some work that didn't get done?
Correct. This is for the basement. This is to waterproof and seal the basement.
Okay, thanks. I just remembered us having done a lot of work and didn't know if it was something new or something that didn't get done previously. Fellow board members and mayor, on Resolution 19, that's the resolution to express disagreement with CAW over their 10-year rate increase that they authorized. Tom, would you strike Section 2 from that resolution? I talked to Shep Russell today, and he thinks it might cause some problems with their bonding if we keep that in there. And my intention is not to disrupt any bonding that exists or any future bonding, but to express our displeasure with the rate indebtedness. And then I'll get with you. There's some grammatical issues on one of the whereases that were pointed out to me, and I'll bring those to you after the meeting.
Thank you, Director
Thank you.
Hines. All right. Before we go to 24, I know we have a presentation requested on 4, as well as we'll bring up Jamie for 12. Any more additional, Director Richardson, your hand's still up, or you took it off? All right. I'm still trying to get to the time limit and get into Summit around 4:30. All right, that being said, Jamie, if you'll come, I know Director Wyrick had a couple questions on item number 12, but also be prepared to discuss item number 4 for a presentation for Director Miller. Am I missing something?
Item 4 would be Kevin.
Director Howard, I'm sorry. Director Howard, if you'll be ready.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. On one item, Bruce, the condemnation that was wanting to defer, if I may speak a little bit to that too. I did speak with the attorney representing the property owner today. They filed for a demolition permit. If it was going to be spoke at the board today, I was going to just, we're going to withdraw that for 60 days to allow them to go through their process. So that's, if we could, if it's okay to change that to a withdrawal, if Director Peck is okay with that for that time frame.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, as Director Wyrick did explain, it was the annexation for the Crystal Valley, off Crystal Valley Road was pulled down to allow us to have the opportunity to analyze the cost-benefit analysis of annexation. After that, we did direct that to be done. Mr. Walter Malone of our planning division within planning development did reach out to the department heads affected by that and come up with a final analysis and a memo submitted to City Manager Mr. Moore. If I would, I'd just like to bring Mr. Malone up here and he can go through the steps that they went through the process of analyzing. In summary of it, we saw a net positive. But it was a time frame. It's not a net positive the first year. You have to actually get the lots developed and built and sold before the taxes kick in. Mr. Malone.
Mr. Mayor and board members, what we did was we contacted each of the line departments and asked them about what the cost would be to service the area from their perspectives. We contacted the property owner and got an estimate on the development timeline. They projected a 20-year full development scheme, so that's what we used. And they said it would be affordable housing. So we looked at an existing affordable housing subdivision in the general area of Little Rock. And that's where we got the values from the assessor's records for that subdivision to use for this subdivision. So that's where we got the values for the new structures. And that's where the timeline came from for the new structures. The fire department indicated that they didn't feel like there would be any additional costs because of the annexation, because of the new fire station on Stagecoach Road, which would service this area. It's not very far away from this annexation area that's asking for annexation, so they didn't feel like there would be any, excuse me, any additional costs to them because of that. The police department indicated that they felt like that there would be only a minimal additional calls. At full development, they were projecting in about 175 additional calls that would be generated because of the subdivision at full development, and they felt like that could be worked into their, current staffing. So the public safety departments did not indicate additional costs because of the annexation to the city of Little Rock. In the Public Works Department, sanitation, solid waste is a fee-based system, so the fees for pickup are supposed to cover. So their hope hopefully will be a wash with the additional cost to each of those new homes to pick up their garbage and recycling. And then for housing department, they estimated a number of calls that they projected to have based on the number of units, and then try to prorate a portion of a staff person to respond to those calls. So those they projected would start a year or two after the houses would be built, and then increase in increments every 5 years is what they told us. So that's how we came up with the prorated cost increase basically every 5 years as a result of that. And then for Public Works, they gave a cost estimate based on the average cost of roads within the entire city to give for their cost estimate per linear foot for the roads. And again, so that was based on the amount of linear feet that would be added for each of the phases based on the the developers plan for full bill out over 5 years. So that's how we came up with the increase in over different years for the amount that went to the cost for the roads. So that's where the revenues and costs came from. The first year, it's currently for those, to refresh your memory, basically, there's basically a vacant piece of property, wooded. There is one house on the property. It's not being lived in, and the plan is not to use that house in the development. So from the standpoint of development purposes, it's considered vacant land and taxed as vacant land. And so that's where the revenues would come in that way. The developer is planning to do the first phase within a year so that would definitely remove the structure that's there today if they do the first phase in that first year to get the roads and do the land alterations that would go with that first phase of development. As was in the original report, the developer will have to make improvements to their side of Crystal Valley Road with phase one. Probably about 2/3 of the linear feet of Crystal Valley on their side of the road would be improved with phase one, and the rest of it would be improved with phase 5 of their overall development. Until then, that which is the western leg of Crystal Valley that would be annexed with this, if it is approved for annexation, would still be the open ditch 2-lane road that it is today. So the widening would be after that. So those were the costs that were projected by the departments that we included in the memo that was hopefully everybody has now. And so if you have questions about that, I can try to answer them. It's all based on assumptions. So if you're wrong about there's going to be a 20-year build out, if it's quicker than that or shorter than that, that's going to change the numbers and both cost and revenue side.
So basically what you did was you identified this silo of a development that's there on Crystal Valley. You've looked at the streets, internal streets. You've looked at garbage, solid waste pickup. You've looked at police and you've looked at fire. And the former police chief said that there would be an issue to potentially serve this area, but the current police chief says that they think they're okay. So if they develop this out faster than what they're talking about, then I know he's got people that he's hiring, and I know we're 90 short, so that there could be some difference in whether or not the police department's able to serve that area. He's a good guy. I'm not saying anything about him. I'm just saying if it gets accelerated, then he could be caught with the situation out there. The thing you did not address was, I think this is 515 units, and you did not address the Crystal Valley Road situation or traffic that this is going to generate. Crystal Valley is a 2-lane road, and today it is covered with people driving up and down. Very narrow, very hilly. It's not really a safe road. So you didn't address, Public Works didn't address what's the trigger for the city to come in and make this 3 lanes or 4 lanes. I would think that if you had 515 homes and you say 2 trips a day, which I make more than 2 trips a day from my house, but that's a lot of additional people that are going to be put on Crystal Valley. Now, I know Jamie says they'll go Colonel Carl Miller to West Baseline and out, but there's a tremendous amount of traffic that's going down Crystal Valley. So why did we not address the trigger for the road improvements that we would have to have or we'd have to do for Crystal Valley Road or traffic?
The only part of Crystal Valley Road that we looked at was the frontage of Crystal Valley with this annexation. And this developer will have to improve their side of Crystal
Right.
Valley as part of this. We typically do not look at off-site developments, so for any development, off-site costs. So for any development, whether it's annexation, a zoning, or any other types of development.
But that, to me, that's part of the impact study. I mean, you looked at the police, how many police officers going to have to serve this? It's not within the subdivision. You looked at the fire department, so this is another variable that, for that subdivision, is the impact on Crystal Valley Road and everybody that's traveling it today. So I think that's missing, and a traffic study is missing. When you go to the sheet that's attached, you've got feet of streets added. Yeah, I guess that's right, foot. Under year one, it shows 1,200 feet. Is that the access on Crystal Valley, or is that in?
That's Crystal Valley.
That's Crystal Valley. Okay. And then you go down to 5, and you're showing, year 5, you're showing 771 feet. What is that?
That's internal roads as well as Crystal Valley.
Are they not building more internal roads than 771?
But they're going to build it, they're not going to build all the streets, they're going to build it in phases. So it keeps on increasing
But
until you
it's-
get full development.
Okay. You just didn't put it in down here in the following years. You just noted year 1 and year 5.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. The two on Crystal Valley are Crystal Valley Road itself.
What's the
Okay?
771?
The 771 is Crystal Valley, that's the western leg of Crystal Valley. The 1,200 is the 1,200 is the initial part of Crystal Valley that the developer will widen as part of phase 1 of their development. And year 5 is the final part that they will widen, the western part of Crystal Valley, that they will widen it with phase 5.
Okay. Did you talk to the water company or the sewer company to understand if they had capacity to serve 515 homes at the end of our city limits boundary?
Both of those companies size their facilities for future expansion, so they are going to require the developer at the time of that they extend the service isn't there for either one of those two utilities. So the developer will have to extend both of those services to this site from where it is today, and they may have to oversize to allow additional capacity. That's an issue that'll be in between them and the two utilities.
Okay, when you say oversize, are you talking about the main trunk lines that
Yes.
go in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, you say that's an issue between the utilities and the developer, but we're looking at a rate increase for water. So, I mean, those are variables that impact the citizens of Little Rock. So that's why I'm asking, that's why I was asking for this impact. I remember when we were developing out west, and we had water company and we had sewer company come in and say, no impact. Well, we know there was an impact because it kept growing and kept going and kept going. So that, with this being at the tail end of our boundary, that's the reason why I asked for this information. So I think we're a little bit short on what the true impact is. Maybe not a little bit short, but I think we're short on the true impact to this development plus the people that are around there. So I appreciate the effort, but those are still things in my mind that need to be addressed.
Director Acott?
Yes. On this, which police precinct would this be out of, do you know? Would it be southwest or northwest?
It would probably be southwest, but I'm not sure.
Well, right now, we do not have enough officers for every one of the districts in southwest to have a police officer at every time of day. And also, I find it funny over here that they estimate that all that build-out would only be 175 police calls per year with all those people. I saw some figures the other day of 2 locations in Little Rock, and one has had 239, one building, 239 police calls a year, and another one 175. So I don't see how all of this build-out is going to only increase 170 police calls per year.
You have to go with what the police department told us.
So, well, we're planning on all those people, I guess, being very, very good out there. And this is going to be Southwest Precinct.
I believe so.
And the police chief said that there'd be no problem.
That's what they indicated to us. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I'm like BJ. I really, on these numbers, I really have a concern on some of them.
Well, he says he's not 100% sure, which.
Yeah, 100% sure, I think is my problem. Thank you.
Director Phillips. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure, I know there was a lot of detail there, Mr. Malone and Director Collins, but just from a big picture perspective, I wanted to get some context for those who are paying attention and watching. My understanding is if this board approves the annexation, we're adding a tax base into the city. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did I hear you correctly say that after the months of study that you, Mr. Malone, and your department did, that the city will actually come out better by annexing this development instead of worse? Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct. That was that net positive summary that I mentioned.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Collins and Mr. Malone, for all your hard work.
Can I do a do-over?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So the net that we'd gain based on this sheet, is this the final 66,646.74?
Mr. Malone, if she's asking specifically about the.
Yes, that's a net over the
That would be-
20-year period, the last column.
That would be the build-out. In 20 years, or 19 years, we would see a net of 66,000.
Assuming it truly builds out 100%.
Okay. So that will not take care of Crystal Valley Road.
Thank you so much. We'll now go to item number 4, Director Howard, and then we'll get ready for the summit presentation. And then after the summit presentation, or Vice Mayor, would you like, are you going to spend a number of time on item 24? No. So we'll do 4 and 24 and then bring the summit. For those who haven't, I don't think there are any more questions on the agenda. So if your agenda items have been discussed, you're free to leave unless you want to stay for the summit conversation.
Good afternoon. I know Director Miller asked for the location. If you would pull up the presentation for me, Alan. So I'll go ahead and I'll wait till Ashley finish. All right, I'll go ahead and go to the location information. So Director Miller, to answer your question, the location is at 3405 and 3511 Roosevelt Road. If you look at the map on, should be, I think, your 4th or 5th page, where it says Little Rock Microhome Village location. As you can see, what's located next door would be Dale McGinnis owns right across the street from Little Rock Compassion Center. It's a huge complex that used to be a hotel. It's 2 vacant lots located right next to them, next to Herb Broadway's location, before you get to that corner, before you get to the county jail. It's 2 tracks. 3405 is 2.39 acres and 3511 is 0.80 acres. And the site total acreage that we would assemble would be 3.19 acres. It's currently commercial land and it's 2 tracks. This is an actual picture of it. It's a gate on the front side off of Roosevelt, so you can see the location. This is a layout of the 2-acre site that we'll do as far as phase 1 with 80 non-congregated units of housing, a community center located in the center, which would entail kitchen, offices, showers, bathrooms, emergency shelter, which includes 20 beds, 10 women and 10 men, animal kennels on site, planters for growing vegetables, and then we have dog runs, restroom facilities, security building, and storage space. Would you like me to continue, Director Miller?
So the buildings that's there now, they'll be torn down or
It's nothing there located.
on that? So the image I'm thinking about is a hotel. That's not,
No, sir.
you are west of that? Or east?
We're east of it.
Okay, I got you. I know right where this is.
Okay. That's it.
No.
Thank you so much, Director Howard.
I got a question.
Director Lewis?
Would more projects like this be needed to help with the homeless issue?
Yes, based on the PIT count that we do each year, I think you would have to have, several locations around the city. This is located in the area we have heavily population of the unsheltered currently right now. So this would address the immediate need in that area. But we do see other areas of the city that has the unsheltered population that's located around the city. So yes.
Okay, how many other cities?
Other cities that have micro-home, tiny home villages, I think it's a little over 150 cities around the country that are doing this right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Adcock, did you have your hand up?
Yes. When you did your count recently, was there more individuals in this area than there was at Ashland University?
So we would consider this area to be hand in hand because they're located on that same run on Ashland University and it runs up to Roosevelt. As far as the PIT count, we don't get the direct location of where these individuals are that are unsheltered. We just know that they're located heavily populated in these areas. And one, because you have Little Rock Compassion Center that's a shelter, it's overnight. Then you have the county jail that's located in this area. And then you have access to several different services along Asher and Colonel Glenn.
I was thinking of grocery stores, that this area is really a food desert, and where Ashland University would have all type of groceries available and everything.
And Director Adcock, we just this week, I think yesterday, and I was going to say this after Director Lewis's question, but the city has issued another RFP that is targeting that area, not so much a micro village, but to provide homeless services, because we know everybody's not going over to East Little Rock and Jericho Way. So that bid will be out for probably another 2 or 3 weeks, and we're going to partner with an organization in that area to provide additional homeless services on a daily basis.
Okay, are we moving Jericho Way over to this facility?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Will there be services like Jericho Way?
Yes, ma'am. We will issue another RFP for someone a nonprofit like a Jericho Way, Our House, to actually manage the village. So it won't be city staff doing it. We'll issue another RFP just to manage the actual village.
Okay, but we won't tie it in with Jericho Way.
No. Obviously, they're a great organization, and if they wanted to apply, it'd be a separate contract, and they'd have to add more staff and things like that.
Okay. Does this provide for any facility for children? Will these people be allowed to have children in this facility?
Yes, if you look at the presentation, it is access for children and families. We do have congregated units of 4. Also, they would have access to the community, which we call a community center that's located in the center part, and they would have access to services there too as well.
So 4 is the largest?
4 is the largest, and then we have other services that we'll provide in there too as well.
Okay. And what will this do to our house?
Excuse me again?
Would this be in competition to our house, or will our house still receive city funding?
Yes, this is just a temporary facility, so we will work with our house to service some of these individuals that come through. You may have a family, a mother with 3 kids, and they may just need temporary services. And then we have case managers that'll work with them to bring them other services such as our house, other wraparound services throughout the city of Little Rock.
Thank you.
Director Wyrick, your hand up, then Director Richardson.
It's up, thank you. You were going away. So this looks like it's a plan similar to what the county's doing and possibly what they're doing in Austin with many homes. But you said temporary services, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so the difference between us and the county, they're doing permanent housing. We're not doing permanent housing. We want to be able to assist these unsheltered individuals for a period of the first day all the way to a period of three months to help them get permanent services. Sometimes it may take a little bit longer based on the situation of the person that's unsheltered. It may take 6 months, but our goal is to try to bring as many people through with temporary services. You may have an individual that's been sleeping in their vehicle for several nights, and they may need sheltering to help them get on their feet. We'll do training in there. We'll do all other services. They can access health services at this facility too as well. They can be fed at this facility until they get to a point with the case manager so they can go into permanent housing.
So do they have to pay anything to come into the shelter?
No, ma'am.
Is there a criteria for the people that are coming in here?
Well, when you're dealing with the unsheltered, you don't have any criteria, because everyone is different. They will have rules that they'll have to follow. They'll have to sign something when they come in with their case manager, because they'll be assigned to a case manager when they come in. As I stated before, we do have emergency shelter that will be located inside of the community center for individuals that need emergency assistance immediately. And so we'll have them, and they'll move out to the non-congregated units around the facility. One thing that we'll do is, it's a proven fact with other different cities around the country that this works. And so we want to make sure that we follow those plans with the services that we'll provide.
And what's the number of folks that you can serve there?
With 80, we have access to 100, actually, you have 80 non-congregated units, and that could be a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and then we have some 4-bedroom units, so you probably could get close to 160 people at one time. And that's at a minimum number. If you have a family that has 4, then you just multiply the number of units that we'll have for the non-congregated 4 bedrooms. Well, 4 family units, I'm sorry.
Have communal facilities for bathroom and
Yes.
eating and I guess whatever services that this shelter is going to provide.
Yes.
And what's the startup and the end to get it ready? Ask this, but what's the time frame?
Well, we're working on a time frame of about 6 to 8 months to get this up and going and get it completed. One thing about it, I've been to several facilities around the country. We can build a non-congregated unit in 1 day. So one of these units can be built in 1 day. We're planning on putting out a invitation to bid for 50% of the construction on this, and then we'll do 50% will be volunteer services. So we should get units up pretty fast once we get everything lined out with our environmental services, and then putting out these bids for the management company.
Is this area fenced, and it's not fenced for probably what you would think about, but just for general protection for the individuals that are staying there? It will be
Yes.
fenced?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be fenced, and we'll have security at the front.
But security for the people that are
Yes.
there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, looks pretty good to me. Thank you.
All right.
Director Richardson? Director Adcock, is your hand still up as well?
Thank you, Mayor. And Kevin, thank you for your presentation. Just for a point of clarity, so we can make sure we all are singing from the same hymnal. You mentioned unsheltered several times in your presentation. Now, is that based on an objective assessment of the variety and different location of homeless camps that we've seen in our city over the past years? Because not every person that's panhandling at a traffic intersection is homeless, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And in your unsheltered remarks is pretty much based on the objective assessment of the variety of homeless camps we have in different parts of our city. Unfortunately, there seem to be concentrated in certain parts of our city. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for your work. Keep up the good work.
Yes,
Good
sir.
job.
Thank you, sir.
Director Adcock?
Yes. Kevin, this says they will have a plug-in fan. So is that all the cooling they will have is a plug-in fan?
No, ma'am, they'll have a mini split unit to go to each one of the non-congregated units, and that gives them heat and air.
Okay, so this thing up on the wall probably is a heater and air conditioner,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
it would be available in each unit.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Howard.
Yes, sir.
Well, Rick, just want to share our appreciation to you, the entire team that's been playing a role in this. This is a game changer and a critical step in how we work to help alleviate homelessness in the city of Little Rock. It's clearly a critical step along the journey, but this is a great usage of American Rescue Plan Act dollars as we forward this, and just want to commend the city board's work as well as we all work together to do this. As we know, there are many cities across the country that are looking at creative ways. I'm glad that Little Rock is leading the way in this as well as we address it. So I just want to share appreciation to everyone. It's truly a team effort. Now we'll go to item number 24, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I tried to send an amendment to everybody several times today, but I was having technical difficulties. I did send an amendment yesterday to the city manager and the city attorney. I also understand that this may be a moot point because there is a bill at the legislature. However, I think our residents have spent years in discussing this particular issue, and we owe it to them to continue our discussion regardless, since we don't know what will happen at the legislature. And because the amendment did not go through, all I wanted to do was just to tell you briefly what the amendment says today. And then if we add it, great. If you all choose not to add it, then, you know, that's the way it goes as well. I left an article by your desk because I tried to send you the link to that, and that did not go through. However, I would like to add an amendment which would put a cap on short-term rentals, and that is not inconsistent with what many cities have done. Here, that people who want to add caps are opposed to tourism or opposed to entrepreneurship and different things like that, and I would simply challenge those. I think that there's a happy middle point. And when I was in Kansas City in November, one of the planning director from Columbia, Missouri, made a statement that really made me look at this issue a little bit differently when he said that we should put the homeowners in the center of this discussion. And a lot of the homeowners did not anticipate that they would suddenly be surrounded by short-term rentals by businesses. And so I think there is a happy medium, and I think a cap, like many of our neighboring cities have done, is reasonable. Again, this may be a moot point, and I will send it again, or maybe I'll ask the city manager to send it out since it did not go through on my email, that amendment number 1, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much. Director Adcox, your hand up.
Yes. I believe that lots of our citizens or residents has thought that this would be a meeting that they could all come to and express their thoughts on this. And I know every time we've moved it on to another date and everything, I think that we've said we need to talk to the residents, we need to talk to the homeowners and everything. I really wish we would stop this until we could have a meeting. We have several neighborhoods that have said from the very beginning, we don't want any of these. Then we've got several neighborhoods that welcomes all of them. But there has to be a happy medium. And I see us just going ahead again without bringing in the neighborhood people for a discussion. I would like to see us have a meeting where we invite all the neighborhood residents to come and let's listen to them. And then after we listen to them, then we can decide how we want to put this together. But right now, without talking to the neighborhood people, mine would be a no vote on this because I don't think the people have been heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, on items 25 and 26 per the applicant, they're not able to be in attendance next week in regards to these particular districts, and so they're requesting a deferral for what date, Mr. Attorney? To March 7th. So we'll put a deferral until March 7th on 25 and 26.
Well, can we still get, I'm sorry for blurting out.
We'll still get the legal opinion.
Thank you. Thank you. Because the neighborhoods are worried about it, Sewer Improvement District's worried about it. Okay. Thank you.
All right, I think we have
Mayor.
everything.
Two quick things. I mentioned in the email that I've sent two reports of the professional services under $50,000. And if no one had any issues with any of them, it's slowing us down. So if there's no issues, I'd like to go ahead and move forward with those contracts to the city attorney's office. Okay.
No objection from me.
And then on the overall city goals and objectives, I've sent those a few times, and that'll just be a motion on your agenda next Tuesday to accept. And this is a new requirement for GFOA. So that'll appear as a motion to accept the overall city goals and objectives. So thank you.
And then also, Ashley should have or has already or will be doing shortly passing out the third quarter financial report for information for you, and that'll be the end of our business today besides Summit. All right, Mr. Kenny Henderson.
Sir Mayor, my name is Kenny Henderson.
And Kenny, just to kind of set the stage,
Yep.
if you'll just give a brief overview about Summit, very brief, and then I'm sure we'll reserve the next 30 minutes or less from questions from city board members.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. My name is Kenny Henderson. I am Vice President of Government Affairs with Summit Utilities. Summit Utilities, you probably or may be aware, bought the natural gas distribution assets of CenterPoint Energy for Arkansas and Oklahoma back in January of last year, and we have been going through a transition process since that time. During the course of the first year that Summit owned the assets, we had a transition service agreement with CenterPoint Energy that for them to continue to provide customer services to our customers while we were building up the infrastructure and the personnel that we needed to completely operate the company. On November 1st of last year, we took that contract came to an end and we converted over from the CenterPoint customer service system to the Summit customer service system. And there have been some bumps along the way with that. We had a situation where for a while we had because of cold weather, we had our call center was pretty overwhelmed and we had some very long answer times and that sort of thing. So I know that you guys have been getting some calls from customers as a result of that. But the bigger issue that I was here to talk to you about today is the cost of gas and the high gas bills that I think some of you have been receiving complaints about. I know I've talked to Director Phillips and Director Richardson about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think they thought it would be helpful if I would come here and kind of have the same conversation with the entire board that I had with them. So that's my understanding of what I'm here for. I have with me Miss Susie Newton, and Ms. Newton has a handout that I think would be helpful to our discussions if we could get that passed out to the group possibly. And while we're waiting to do that, I'd just say this. Ms. Newton is also here in the event that we do have customers here who may have specific customer questions about their bill. Ms. Newton is here to help take some information from them so that we can go back and look at their accounts and be able to answer their questions for them. So we'll be happy to do that at the conclusion of the presentation as well if there are people here who need that.
I'm not sure who was first.
Director Richardson.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Kenny, for being here. I think you and I had a conversation on January 24th when I started reaching out to you and your guys about the complaints about gas bills that I've been receiving from constituents. And in no time, and you correct me if I'm wrong, in no time during that conversation did the notion that these were estimated bills come into our conversation. In fact, I think I raised issues with respect to some of my constituents saying that their bills have, at the minimum, tripled or maximum quadrupled. And this was the first bill that these guys had received from you guys. And of course, that put me and you guys in an awkward position with respect to how do we explain this. And make it clear to us, and while we're doing this, it was my understanding that meters are being read via Bluetooth right now, and I raised the issue whether or not that could be cause of the problem with the rates going up so high and people's bills going up so high. You said that wasn't, that there was probably more accurate reading. And we did talk some about, have we even looked at replacing some of the meters? Because when we had similar problems with Entergy and complaints about higher bills, they actually went out, and I don't expect you guys to do this for all of your customers, but they actually went out and looked at some of the meters that were malfunctioning that was responsible for these high bills that these customers were receiving. And at no point in time do I remember us talking about, as we've heard recently, these are being estimated prices and uses, and none of those people usage quadrupled, and I'm not sure the price of gas has quadrupled. So we had people reaching out to me saying they were used to having $70, $80 bills, having $240, $250 bills now, and was really, really upset and irate about that. And I thank you for reaching out to Director Phillips after you and I had spoken some about this and this being an issue, and bringing some kind of clarity with respect to all of our system, but particularly those who are living in low socioeconomic parts of our city. And this is having a real deleterious impact on their ability to pay for medicine or buy groceries. And it just seems like it's grown tremendously. And that was the first bill that they had gotten from you guys, coincidentally. So can you kind of help explain that to us and give me some clarity on that again, please?
Sure, I'll be happy to try to do that. First of all, the estimated bill issue is really kind of a separate issue that came up, I think, after we had talked about the high gas cost issue. So I'd like to kind of take those two issues separately if I could. In response to a couple things that you said, though, in terms of the meter reading being electronic meter reading, I will tell you this, that the accuracy of our meter readings got tremendously better when we implemented that. It's a lot less human error. So I think that is absolutely a positive. I think it makes it much less likely that we would have meter reading errors. As far as replacement of meters, we have a statistical meter sampling program that the Public Service Commission monitors that we implement, and we pull a certain number of meters every year on a statistical sample basis and determine what vintage and model of meters may be causing problems and replace those over time. And there's a big, lengthy plan for that. So we believe we do a very good job of keeping our meters in good shape and in compliance with the requirements of the Arkansas Public Service Commission. So I don't believe that either one of those two things are issues. I'm not saying that there couldn't be some isolated issues somewhere, but I don't think that either of those two things would be the cause of, the issues that you're having by and large here. If I could maybe start with just the cost of gas issue, if you would look at the handout that I think you just received, thought it would be helpful in this regard to kind of look at a customer bill and the different parts of the customer bill to talk through this. I think this will maybe help to simplify it a little bit and help with everyone's understanding. This is an actual Summit bill and you'll see if you look at we've got the numbered parts of the bill, numbers 1, 2, and 3. Those are the three major parts of our bill. And the first part is our delivery and service charges. And those charges are the charges that are approved by the Arkansas Public Service Commission and that cover our actual cost of service, what it costs us to do business. And that's the part of the bill that our return on our investment is built into that. That all is established in a rate case before the Arkansas Public Service Commission, and they establish those rates. The second charge there, which is the supply charges, is the actual cost of the natural gas. And as far as the cost of the natural gas itself, that is a straight pass-through. We don't mark it up. Over time, the customers pay exactly what we pay for the natural gas itself. I like to say that, a natural gas distribution company, I like to say that, I'm sorry, is there a question?
No, just keep.
Okay. I like to say that a natural gas distribution company is a lot like a trucking company. We make our money transporting and delivering the product, but we don't make our money off of the product itself. So I think it's really important to understand in this context that we don't make any money off of the gas supply. We don't like high gas prices because it creates a hardship on our customers. Frankly, what we get out of it is customer complaints and higher bad debt. So I think we're all in the same boat here in not liking these high gas costs. But unfortunately, gas prices have just gone way, way up over the course of the last year or two. And there are lots of things driving that. There's the war in Ukraine and the supply going to Europe that causes supply constraints. There's been COVID-19. There have been supply issues that are still resulting from that. There have been any number of other issues, federal policies that are requiring more natural gas to produce electricity. So in the end, though, it's just a question of supply and demand, and natural gas prices have been very, very high this year. You can see that if you look at our delivery and distribution charges, that number is, I think, $67.51. This is kind of small. I have trouble reading, but I've got it. It's $67.51. And then the actual cost of gas itself the supply charge is $151.76 of this bill. So that's, natural gas prices are up over 30%, I think, from where they were last year. At this point, last winter, our gas supply cost was 90 cents per CCF. It's at $1.22 per CCF now. So that is part of why you're seeing a big part of why you're seeing the large bills. The other part is just we had some extremely cold weather in December, and it have had colder than normal weather, and so that has driven volumes up. So it's a combination of much higher gas cost and higher than normal volumes being used that has driven these gas costs up. And then the final part of the bill you can see is taxes and other charges. And on this particular bill, the taxes is $31.30. So those three components make up our bill. But the piece of the bill that is really driving this thing is the natural gas cost. As far as the deliveries and service charges, I know some people have thought that, that because of the timing that these bills went up when Summit took over from CenterPoint, that maybe somehow Summit raised the rates. I can assure you that's not the case. I've been with this company and predecessor company since 1995. I was here when it was Arkla Gas Company, when it was Reliant, when it's CenterPoint, and now when it's Summit. And I can tell you that when Summit took it over, there were some small adjustments to the delivery charges just as a practical matter, but nothing material. There were no material. It's essentially the same rates that CenterPoint was charging. So that is that's the issue with the gas cost. And then I guess Director Richardson, going to your question of the estimated bills, that is an issue that arose after you and I talked last, and we discovered a situation where the way Summit's system is designed, if a meter is not read, then it automatically produces an estimated bill. And we had a situation where we had read the meters, but because of the data processing issue, for about 167,000 customers that were affected in Arkansas and Oklahoma, that the meter readings did not get into the system properly, and so estimated bills were issued for those 167,000 customers, and it was for a defined period of time, I think between, January 17th and the 17th and the 25th of January that these estimated bills were issued. And so when we discovered that, we canceled the bills, reissued corrected bills, and we extended the due date so everyone would have the time they needed to pay. So I know that's created a little bit of more confusion, and on top of the high gas costs, that's created some consternation. But in terms of actual impact on customer bills, I think very few people paid the estimated bill. I think most people had time to pay the actual bill. To the extent that they did pay the estimated bill, they'll be made whole on that. And I would say this, the estimated bills were generally within about 4% plus or minus of what the actual bills based on the actual readings were. So they weren't, for the most part, weren't way off. Some people were billed more based on the estimate than they should have under the corrected bill, under the actual meter reading. Some people actually, when the bill was corrected, their bills went up a little bit because the estimate was a little low. So we regret that happened, but we did everything we could to correct it as soon as possible. Our IT folks have figured out what the data processing issue was. That's been fixed, and we don't anticipate that being an issue anymore. So I hope that's helpful. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, other questions you guys have.
Director.
Kenny, I just have two more, Vice Mayor Webb. I know other colleagues have questions. Full disclosure, consider me those included as one of the complaints. When I saw my bill, Kenny, and I saw the usage, it wasn't 4 times the amount of usage. If I read my bill correctly, that I was charged, And I guess your last point, it really explains why I've had people get two bills in this month alone. So that explains that. But it seems to be a huge increase. And for that to be the first communication for you guys to have with our citizenry, and looking at those amounts that's been reported to me, and I know a lot of my colleagues have questions and/or complaints, so I don't want to prolong mine, but you see what we're dealing with respect to the amount of these bills, and we have people who live on fixed incomes, and it almost quadrupled in some cases, and the usage then quadrupled. And I was just wondering, did the price of gas quadrupled? Did it go up that high? Because it was real disconnect with respect to what you and I talked about on January 24th and what we're talking about tonight.
Well, it's a combination. It's not one or the other. It's a combination of increased usage and the increased prices. So, I mean, if there's individual bills that people have questions on, we can certainly look at those and make sure they're calculated correctly. But it's a combination of increased usage and higher gas costs is what we're talking about. In terms of communications, and I know this is a tough situation. I mean, I'm a Summit customer myself. I've got family members who are Summit customers. I manage my mother-in-law, 92-year-old mother-in-law's finances, and received a huge bill for her the other day. She lives in an older house. It's not well insulated, and it's a lot of money for her. So we understand the difficulties. In terms of communications, we had made a very robust effort to communicate with customers about the fact that gas prices were expected to be high this winter. We issued press releases, we did paid media, we used every social media platform that we had. We did emails. There was a very concerted effort to communicate with customers about the anticipated high gas costs and to help to educate customers on conservation and some tips on how to save energy costs. It's just, I don't think anybody really realizes, you see that stuff, but I don't think anybody realizes the impact until they actually see the bill. And I understand that, because when I opened my mother-in-law's bill, it didn't feel very good at first. So I understand the frustration, and we wish things could be different, but that is the issue.
Well, consider me one who would like to visit with you on his bill, and as a customer, not as a board member, and I have no other comments, but as a customer, I would like for you to help me understand mine as well, and I have my other colleagues who I know have plenty of questions. Take on. All right. Thank you, Ken.
Yes.
We do have a number of hands up, and we'll go to Director Phillips, then Director Hines, Campuris, and Adcock.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Webb, and thank you, Kenny, for two reasons. One, for I guess three reasons. One, being responsive to my communications with you to start this conversation. Secondly, we appreciate you coming here to try to shed some light and help educate our constituents. And third, I do tip my cap to Summit for publicly recognizing a mistake that it made with the estimation in the bills and trying to correct it. So thank you for all three of those things. But as it relates to the last one, it does contribute to some, I think you said consternation or distrust between the people we have been elected to represent and the people that pay bills to Summit. So with that being said, I do have a few questions to make sure that we understand how this works, what we can do going forward. Okay. My understanding of this is that Summit has the autonomy to raise gas prices on its own. You don't have to go to the Public Service Commission for that, correct?
No, that is not correct. No.
That's not correct. Okay, well, correct me.
The Arkansas, we change our gas prices twice a year. Once for the winter, which is effective October. They're effective October 1st, and once for the summer, and those new rates are effective April 1st. As a matter of fact, we'll be making a filing with the Public Service Commission in, I guess, late March for a new gas supply rate that will take effect on April 1st. The Public Service Commission reviews those filings. They have standards we have to follow, and they ensure that over time, what we collect as a part of that rate is just the cost that we incur. I will say this as a positive note, gas prices have in recent days dropped, and the forward-looking prices have dropped some. And so we are very hopeful that if things stay where they are, that when we make our filing for rates to be effective April 1st, those rates will actually come down some. But it's just, it's difficult to predict what natural gas prices are going to do over time, you know. So, but we're hopeful that that the rates are going to be a little lower.
Okay, so
April 1st.
I think I understand what you're saying. So the Public Service Commission did approve this rate
Yes.
that we have currently, correct?
Yes, it's pursuant to their tariffs. They have audit authority over it. We follow their protocols, and the calculation of the rate is designed to recover just our actual costs.
Okay, and when did Summit submit this rate to the Public Service Commission?
This rate would have been submitted shortly before, it would have been in September, I think, shortly before October 1st, because I think it took effect October 1st.
Okay, and Summit took over, the deal ended in January 2022, but it didn't really become public to the customers until the fall of 22, is that correct?
Well, the January of 2022 is when Summit actually took ownership and operation of the company. And those the rates that CenterPoint, the gas supply rates that CenterPoint had in effect were essentially, at that point, were just assumed by Summit until the next time came around to change them.
Right, and I'm saying the public rollout for the Summit takeover from CenterPoint was in the fall, late summer of 2022, correct? Because that's when I remember getting the email saying, hey, we're taking over your utilities. Is that accurate?
It should have been January of 2022 that's when we actually took over. Now, there may have been some communications before that. Now, we also, I'd like to say it was November 1 of 2022 when we actually took over the customer service piece from CenterPoint.
Yeah, and that's
that
what
may
I'm
be
referring
what you're
to.
thinking about.
That's what I'm referring to.
Communications around that. Yes.
Okay, so what I'm getting at from a public perspective, and this is what I understand from the constituents that reach out to me, they get an email saying, hey, Summit's in charge of your customer service, and then the next month they get a bill that's a lot higher than they normally have seen. Do you follow my timeline?
I do, and I think that's largely timing. It was going into the winter, and bills go up in the winter. I mean, and the high gas costs were hitting along about that time.
Okay, so the people, I've had different people reach out, just like Director Richardson saying, hey, my bill's tripled. Had someone actually reach out to me today, say, hey, I have a investment property that's vacant. I keep it on 59, and my bill was over $400. That 59 is cold.
Yeah.
And my wife would move out from my house if it was 59. She likes it a lot warmer than that. But what I'm getting at, there's an issue here, Kenny, and we need to make sure we are educating our citizens on what is happening or what can happen.
Yeah.
So my question first, for especially to those who are, having trouble to pay their bills, what is Summit doing to address those needs for people who say, I can't handle my bill going up double, triple?
Well, we certainly understand the hardship that creates for people. As always, we work very diligently with people when we can to try to make appropriate payment arrangements. We also refer people to assistance agencies where they can get assistance with their gas bills where that's available. We've created a new Summit assistance plan that Summit's actually contributed to. I think we've contributed. I think we've paid about $20,000 of folks' utility bills through that in the last couple of months. It's just been in place a couple of months. I mean, we work with customers every way we can. You know, we have a partnership with the Watershed, and we work with them. We work with other nonprofit agencies, but
Are we,
but in the end, there's never enough. I mean, it's
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is there anything that can be done? Because and obviously this is anecdotal, and I don't have all the information you have at Summit, but the people who seem to be being hit hardest with this are those whose homes may not have the insulation in some of the newer homes. So is there a way for Summit to identify who's being most impacted and actually reaching out to those folks directly on how the options available to them as opposed to vice versa?
I don't really think we have the demographic, I don't think we keep the demographic information we would need to be able to really do that, but certainly we're working with customers as they call into us, and you know, we do what we can, and we'll continue to do that.
And back to the question that Director Richardson had, did I hear you correctly? You said that now without people going to actual read meters, that you're getting a more accurate reading of the meters?
Absolutely, because you don't have...
Explain how the meters are being read.
Well, there's what's called an ERT on the meter, and actually a truck drives by down the street and it's electronically transferred and read electronically. And yes, it's far more accurate than it was when we had folks out in the field going and physically reading the meters, because you just don't have the human error that you did at the time you had people going out and physically reading the meters.
And how is that being checked? Is there some type of I know you can't go by and there's no point in having someone go do the work twice, but how are we assuring that technology is accurately reading folks' meters?
Again, we have a statistical sampling program that has been developed and approved by the Public Service Commission that we use to monitor the accuracy of all our meters. It involves doing a statistical sampling program where we sample the meters and test them and over time to make sure that the meters are accurate.
Okay, and then lastly, and then Mayor, I'll pass the mic to my colleagues. As it relates to, I know you said twice a year you go to the PSC to adjust rates.
For the gas piece.
And that's the gas
That's the number
supply
two
rate.
That's the gas supply rate. That's number two, shown as number two.
Right, gas supply rate. And that was what you said has been a significant increase
Yes.
from your perspective on what?
Yes, it was 90 cents per CCF this time last winter. It's $1.22 per CCF this winter.
And I guess I'm trying to get a better understanding when you go to the PSC to get that. Is that information shared? Like, when do people know, or is it after the PSC has voted to either approve that rate or not?
Well, they don't really, it's more of an automated thing. We have a tariff, and we follow a particular, formula in developing that rate and filing that rate. They audit that rate. They don't necessarily approve it on the front end, but they audit that rate to make sure it's accurate.
So are they presenting the rate to you, or are you going to them asking for a rate?
We're going to them and making a filing consistent with our tariff that calculates the rate the way the tariff that's been approved by the commission says it should be calculated, and that goes into effect automatically when we file it, but that's subject to audit by them, and they audit that fairly regularly, and they, we have to follow the guidelines that are in the tariff. So it's effectively approved by the commission.
And traditionally, do the rates go, are y'all increasing rates going into the winter months and decreasing them in the spring?
They absolutely go both ways.
I'm sorry, Ken, let me finish the question so people understand.
Sure.
We can't talk over each other.
Sure.
So typically, do you increase rates going into the winter and decrease rates coming out of the winter?
Not necessarily. It really does depend on what the rates do, maybe what the prices of gas are, how much we've collected. There's a deferred balance fund in there, so we don't always collect it perfectly. So there's a deferred balance that's carried. Sometimes that's a credit, sometimes it's a debit, and each time we file, that's applied to the filing as well. So you end up with, it works over time. It collects the actual amount that you paid.
And I think you said you've been with the utility for quite a long time, right, Kenny?
I've been with this utility and prior predecessors of it since 1995, yes.
Do you, and for our constituents watching, have you seen a decrease in rates, or should they expect, hey, it's high today and it's going to be even higher tomorrow and the days going forward?
It just depends on what the competitive price of natural gas does in coming days. Like I say, the rate that's there now will be the rate until April 1, and then what the rate that we file on April 1 will be the rate following that.
Do you have experience of rates decreasing, or is this a steady climb?
No, the gas supply rate goes up and down, just depending on what the price of gas is, because all we're doing is collecting what we paid. And for instance, in the early 2000s, that's the last time gas prices were, I think, anywhere near where they've been this time. They were actually higher, I think, at that time. And, you know, of course, our gas supply rate went way up then, but then with hydraulic fracturing and all of the technology for developing, gas prices came way down. They came down to like $2.50 an MCF, and that gas supply rate came right down with it. We've actually been through a period of years with very low gas supply costs. It's just in the last couple of years that started to rise again.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you entertaining my questions, Mayor. I'll stop for now. Thank you. Thank you, Kenny.
Director Hines?
Thank you. Kenny, thanks for coming here today. I had actually asked for you guys to come talk to us from early December. Do you remember the West Little Rock outage you guys had?
I do remember that, yes, sir.
I never really got a straight answer as to why that occurred. You know, on Summit Utilities website, social media, it was saying there was only, you know, several dozen houses, and I can tell you it was a lot more than several dozen because it impacted, you know, my in-laws, several people in areas, and I can tell you the feedback I was getting when I was seeing on social media was more than a couple dozen homes. Yeah. And I would like to know exactly why that occurred. Your customer service folks were telling people, well, we didn't anticipate the high demand. Well, they had been forecasting on the weather for several days that we were going to have extremely low temperatures, and we didn't have that issue back last February when, you know, we had snowpocalypse and the temperature was below freezing for about 5 straight days. We didn't have nearly that extreme in December.
Hang on. Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure I remember the reason. My recollection is that involved a frozen regulator station and that they had to go out and do some work on a regulator station. But I may be wrong about it. I may need to check on that and get back.
I'd appreciate you running that down.
That's not something that I was directly involved in. I'm not sure I know the right answer. I can get that answer and get it to you, though.
Well, would it surprise you that I asked our mayor and city manager to reach out to you guys? I'd like an answer.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that you had reached out to us.
No, that's fine. I didn't reach out directly to you, but the great thing is from the email you sent today, I've got your name and cell phone number.
Okay.
So I know how to get a hold of you.
Okay, yeah. I'll be happy to look into that and get you the answer to your question.
Okay, that'd be great.
I just don't recall for sure.
And I can tell you, I'm a very small government kind of guy, except when it comes to a few certain things that Milton Friedman defined for us, and regulating monopolies is one of them. And I take it very seriously because the impacts, and, you know, I'm not going to be quite as conciliatory as my Director Phillips was. It took the state attorney general getting involved, calling your CEO up to get you guys to own up to what was going on with the bills. I mean, that's the first, because I can tell you I was getting calls about people's bills, and then I flipped mine up and looked at it and I go, there's no way it was that much, for one. And I said, that exceeds the usage that we had even last February when it was, you know, snowpocalypse. So, and it came out a couple of days after that you guys had this billing error. So
I actually believe we self-reported to the Attorney General, is my understanding.
Okay, well, and maybe that was the media, because I started getting calls, and the first reports I had was that the Attorney General had contacted you guys because they had over 700 complaints.
I believe we self-reported to the Attorney General.
And I'm not going to harass you for the gas supply rate, but the question I have is, so to clarify, because you guys have two sets of rates. You've got your delivery and service charges that are set by the PSC, and then you have your supply charges.
And both are actually set by the PSC, but the supply charges are just actual cost.
So are they preset? Do you guys project those? That's why I was getting a little confused at what you and Director Phillips were talking.
Yes, it's based on a projection that gets trued up.
Okay, so either good or bad, that's why we have a credit on our bills when it,
Yeah.
and I guess, do you guys not hedge fuel? I mean, I can tell you from having a duck club, we buy our propane in July when it's at the bottom before you try to buy it and.
We have a large amount of storage. We do physical hedges through storage. We buy gas in the summer, fill up storage, and empty that storage in the wintertime.
Okay, so you guys are hedging.
Right now is coming out of storage.
Okay.
So we do physical hedges. We don't do financial hedges anymore. We once did those and had some issues around that, but we do physical hedging.
Now I'm going to switch my hat where government comes to blame, and I'm not going to lay the supply charges at your foot. It's our current administration's attack on our hydrocarbon industries that are driving gas prices up. And I know you may not want to say that in public, but I will. And that's part of the reason we're seeing it. It's not the war in Ukraine. It's our attack on our own domestic supply of gas and oil, and we are a gas-rich state. We shouldn't be seeing these high prices, except we have the current presidential administration that's attacking our industries and driving prices up. So people you want to know why you're getting high gas prices? It's our own federal government's fault. It's not Summit Utilities. So I appreciate you coming today and explaining this to us. And like I said, I'm usually pretty direct and can get a hold of you, but now that I have your number, I know how to
If you'll give me a call, I will look into that and get back with you on it.
And I appreciate it because I was one of the guys impacted and my bill went down by about 20%. But it was only about $60 higher than my highest bill last year, which was during the snowpocalypse. And most of that was due to the supply charge difference. And I can tell you that going back 3 years, it was 40 cents back in 2019. And when the current administration came in, we've seen nothing but a meteoric rise in our gas prices. So I'll put my 2 cents in there, and I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Director Hines, just for information and clarity, Kenny is not the person that myself and Bruce was speaking to. It was his boss, the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs that's located in Maine.
Okay. Well, like I said, I never heard from anybody, so my assumption was my request was ignored, so I appreciate it.
None of your requests are ever ignored, so just want to make sure the clarity was there. Director Campuris.
Well, thank you for coming in. And let me make sure I understand this. You distribute gas and you're a pass-through agency.
As far as the gas supply is, that's true.
Mr. Kenny, can you speak up to the mic?
Yes. As far as gas supply is concerned, that's true. It's a direct pass-through.
And the rate that you charge is based on a twice yearly PSC determination.
It's semi-annual. It's twice a year.
Yeah.
And twice a year.
So basically, demand is a customer's responsibility, how much they use.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So if you set your house at 59 so that your house is not very cool or not very warm, then you use less than if you do what Antoine's wife is doing at 90 degrees.
Not 90. She's going to be mad at you, Director.
Correct. That's correct, yes.
So the only variable is what the individual customer does.
That's true. It's usage and the higher price that's driving the high gas bills.
So when you go twice a year back to the PSC, and they're monitoring over a 6-month period of time what's happening, and they're doing samplings of cost, if you are losing money on supply, do they make it up the next time?
It goes both ways. If we under-collect it.
Right. But I mean, it's both ways.
Both ways, yes.
So it's not that you're charging whatever this is, and I'm old now, I can't read it very well, but it's just every 6 months you even up
That's right. There's a deferred balance that's carried, and if we collect a little more than projected and that balance is positive, then the customers get the benefit of it. If not, it goes the other way. Yes.
Then, and this is really none of my business, but how do you make money?
That's why I was explaining the number one on the bill.
I know, but I sort of.
That's where we make our money. It's built into the distribution charges. So that's why I was saying we're like the trucking company. We get paid to transport and distribute the gas through those charges, but we don't get paid anything for the gas. We just buy it and pass it the cost through.
So who regulates that?
The Arkansas Public Service Commission.
So that's regulated also?
Yes, all of this is done at the Arkansas Public Service Commission. pursuant to their
So
supervision.
really, there's the two things that are happening. They're evening up the amount of money we're charged. That's number two. That's on your chart. Correct?
Right, yeah. Yes.
And the only way you make money is on number one.
Right.
So really, when we're talking about this, what your remuneration on this is only based on what the PSC gives you on delivery fees.
That's correct.
So it's got nothing to do with the cost of gas.
Exactly. We do not make money on gas. We're not in the marketing or the production business. Marketers and producers may make money on the price of gas. We don't.
Then I would suggest then rather than getting beat up by 10 board members and Bruce and the mayor, that when we all talk about this, the assumption is that you're making money on number two.
Right, that's what I was trying to explain, yes.
I know, but my point to you is your PR people need to be out here saying, if I were you, look, guys, we're not doing anything. We're just a distributor. You're the trucking company.
Yeah.
We truck by pipe.
Yeah.
And that's where we're making our money, and that's the reason that Summit bought it.
Yeah.
And that Arkla had it. Actually, Arkla had a little different deal, as you know, when that was going on. But that's the variable right there. That's the only variable.
It is, and we do try to do that. We try to spread that message every way we can. People tend not to hear it or maybe not understand it very well, or but we try to get that message out there. Maybe we don't do as good a job.
I would suggest that would be something I'd go back and say that I'd rather do that than have a bunch of people chewing on my back end up here about something that I've got no control over.
Right, and that's the bottom line. We just don't have control over the market price of natural gas.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Director Adcock, then Director Phillips, and I think we'll be done.
Hi there.
Hello.
I'm going to talk to you about phone calls.
Okay.
Because I think when your bills came out, I probably spent hours sitting at my kitchen table making phone calls for not only myself, but for some of the other residents.
Yes, ma'am.
And I never could get through to anyone. Your phone calls are not answered correctly. They just keep you on lines after lines after lines. And I wish you could do something where when you call, you talk to a person and that person has information. Because it got very frustrating for the residents to call and never get an answer.
Yes, ma'am.
And even today, if they start calling, there's not an answer given to them of why or what to do about it and everything. So phone calls, I think, is one of the big problems. You mentioned that you have a commission. Do you have a commission of residents, or who's on your commission and how does it operate?
The Arkansas Public Service Commission is made up of 3 commissioners who are appointed by the governor.
Okay,
And,
but you do not, Summit does not have a commission.
No, it's the Arkansas Public Service Commission. It's the state agency that regulates us as a regulated utility, and they establish our rates.
Because I have told lots of people you was going to be on here tonight, so I want to make sure that they understand who you are and who you are accountable to.
Yes.
I would like to make a suggestion.
Okay.
Road changers will be in Little Rock in about 2 months.
I'm sorry.
Road changers.
Okay.
And they are 238 young people, high school and college students who will be here to work on the residents of seniors and disabled people.
Yes, ma'am.
The people are starting to apply for it. And they would do outside house repairs and also to paint houses. I would suggest that you get with Kevin Howard that was sitting right over here a while ago and talk to him about Summit allowing money to be given to these young people to also put caulking and things around windows, which will lower the bills of their utilities.
I'll be happy to look into that. And
So I wish you would look into that because they would be here and that would be a workforce that will already be provided to you that you can join up to. And after the meeting, any one of us can tell you how to get a hold of Kevin Howard and the 238 people. They're from all over the United States. And I'm one of those people, my bill was $68 for a long time. And I got home from being in the hospital 2 weeks and my neighbors started calling me. And I thought, they're all wrong. And I got my bill and I found out they was right. Mine went to $219. Nobody was in my home. My dog didn't even stay home during that time. So I think that, lots of people just was caught off guard of how much they could go up and everything. But please address the phone calls because it's very hard on our seniors to call and then not be able to get a hold of somebody that can answer their questions.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, and we've been working very diligently on that. There was a period of time for a good period of time that it was taking a long time to get calls answered. We've hired a bunch more, I think 100 more customer service agents and done a lot of other work on our system to improve that. A lot of that had to do with, there was the cold weather and just we were getting tremendous call volumes and they got overwhelmed. But I will say this, as of last week, my understanding is that the average wait time was down to about 9 minutes. Now, it needs to get better than that, but it's a lot better than it was. I think the improvement there has
I
been.
waited sometimes 30 minutes to an hour.
There's been a lot of improvement there, but there's still more improvement to do, and we're working on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Director Phillips? Yeah, two final things. Sorry, Mayor and Board. Kenny, you mentioned in your conversation with Director Hines about hedging. I'm curious to know when you hedge by purchasing gas at a cheaper rate in the summer, how is that calculated into what the proposed rate will be going into the winter?
It is. I would say this, gas is not always cheaper in the summer. There are situations where it doesn't always work that way, but we do buy gas in the summer and store gas, and it helps to stabilize our rates so we don't get caught by the big swings as much. So sometimes the gas that we have in storage ends up being a little higher than what we can buy it for at the time. Sometimes it's lower, but we do hedge in that manner, and it's all calculated into the cost.
Understood. And then lastly, to make a suggestion along the lines of Director Kapira's, I know you said you may not have the demographics to be able to reach out to the people who live in certain places where they see these bigger fluctuations. That may be something to look into, and I know a lot of people use levelized billing and didn't see the big shift.
Yes.
So maybe that may be a PR thing where someone at Summit or some people at Summit can identify folks who did experience a big shift and then directly reach out to them as opposed to the mass email we all get, hey, you should try levelized billing. Like, no, your bill went up from $68 to $250 like Director Adcock. Here's what levelized billing can do for you individually. So that may be a suggestion to help prevent some of the swings and then the phone calls and emails that we have received from our constituents as well.
Okay, and I appreciate you mentioning average monthly billing. I would like to say that's what we recommend, that everybody who can go on average monthly billing because it really does help. I have not been on average monthly billing myself until just recently. I've always just paid it because I liked having the lower bill in the summertime, but I went on average monthly billing. It dropped mine from like $250 to $108, I think. Now you're going to be paying that every month, but at least it helps with the budgeting and you don't get caught with this, $300 or $400 bill.
I agree with you, and I think if we have some direct contact with folks that are experiencing some dramatic shifts, it may help alleviate some of the emails that both you and I have received.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ken. Thank you, Mayor.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. And Kenny, again, thanks for being here. And I was going to dovetail a couple of points that Director Phillips just made. And I know my mom is watching, and she's on levelized building. She's gonna be at home saying, laughing. I told you. I told you. You never listen. I told you 5 years ago to do this. And she's probably laughing as I say this right now. But the other thing, Kenny, you and I talked about, and you made a brief reference to it a minute ago, a lot of us represent residents on fixed incomes or low incomes. And are there any other places besides the watershed that we can refer people to get assistance? Because a lot of people are going to need assistance with these last bills that just came out. I know when you and I talked back in January, you made reference to the watershed, and you just mentioned it again a minute ago. Are there other places that we can refer people to for assistance?
I believe CADC is one place, and I believe, don't we have a list on our website? I think if you'll go on the Summit Utilities website, I think there's a list of assistant agencies that you can access there.
Okay, we'll do that. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Director Phillips, for giving me the bridge to cross over to with that, your last two questions with Kenny.
Thank you very much.
All right, members of the board, I believe we've answered all the questions for today. We've shared the reports that are been distributed to you. I'll see you on February 21st.